and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stacy and I'm a NASM certified personal trainer. I have some workout guides on my website, which I'll have linked below. And also, if you join my newsletter, you'll get one of those for free. I'm also a Dream Vacations travel advisor, so I can help you plan your next dream vacation. And I'll have my travel website and free quote form linked below. I post travel, Disney, week of workouts, and of course this book recap once a month. So if you're interested, please consider subscribing to my channel. My goal is to reach 500 subscribers by the end of April. So please like this video so that YouTube can show it to other people to help me achieve that goal. And today's video is my January books recap and February TBR, so the books I want to read in February. And there is one specific series that I'm gonna go to a little bit more detail in, which I will leave to the end, and I'll let you know in case you don't want any spoilers, because it's a brand new book series that was released in January. And yeah, I will still put something on the screen and let you know when to either skip ahead or exit the video completely if you don't want any spoilers if you haven't read this series yet and you would love to, because I have thoughts. So let's go ahead and get into this video. Okay, so I started the Flight and Glory series by Rebecca Yarros with Full Measures and Eyes Turned Skyward. Those two books, so freaking good. Like, Rebecca Yarros knows how to hook you in, and it is wild. The story, it's an interconnected romance series. And the first book I know we will see in a later book in the series. There's 5 books. And after I read the first one, I'm like, oh no, how much more can these two characters handle? But then there's more. So like, I'm excited to continue that series, but I'm not like, I need to do it right now because I have other books that I want to read. I read the Hunger Games books by Suzanne Collins with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. I actually never read these books before and I never saw the movies. I had a generalized idea of the storyline, so I started with a Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but if you've never even heard of the books, which how could you? Because I had even heard of them, but I didn't know the details of the plot. I would not suggest starting with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes just because it's a background prequel book of a pretty important character in the trilogy. But if you know the generalized story, you can kind of get the gist of it like I did. Like, I actually didn't know who this character was going into it, but I knew that they were going to be someone important, and it was a lot of fun to kind of think about, ooh, what's this character's arc going to be in the series? But if you don't know anything, it might be confusing. But if you're like a diehard, I love chronological books like me, then you could go into it without knowing anything, but you might just be a tiny bit confused. And then I read The Last Call at the Local by Sarah Ruiz. Not sure, I hope I'm trying to say that right at least. This one was really cute. It was about a traveling musician who got stranded in Ireland, went into this bar and met the owner, didn't realize it, and the owner's just making small talk and asked her, hey, what would you do to, you know, improve this bar? And she gave a bunch of ideas, and then he ended up hiring her, and of course it's a romance, so it was a lot of fun to read and super duper cute. And then I read Next Door Nemesis by Alexa Martin. This one is an enemies to lovers kind of story. Honestly, I don't think I've ever read a true enemies to lovers. This one kind of was. They were childhood friends, but then one random event, the main male character decided he was gonna just stop talking to her randomly while they were in school, and she had no idea why, so then they ended up becoming enemies because of that. But then they reconnected later as adults and realized that they never hated each other. Like, it was all a miscommunication kind of thing. And yeah, not sure if it was true enemies to lovers, but that's generally what ends up being called enemies to lovers. I don't know. Either way, I did enjoy this book. And then I read The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which I did not realize was a movie starring Lucy Hale. And I'd seen the movie, and as soon as the book started going, I'm like, oh, I know this story. And then I kind of looked it up, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why, because it's literally a movie called the same name. But I did enjoy it, and it was a lot of fun to read, even if I knew the story already. And then I began The World of Solaria by Carolyn Peckham and Suzanne Valenti with the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series. And I read Dark Fae. And this was a big difference coming off of, because I read Onyx Storm, which just released and I'll get to in a minute, it's a lot more fast-paced compared to the Dark Fae, the Ruthless Boys series. It's a very slower paced book, so it was just a big difference going from Onyx Storm to that, but I enjoyed it a lot. It definitely is a slower book series. It's a why choose romance where they're all Fae and there's different rules and things, and we're just slowly getting information throughout the book. Our main character is trying to solve her brother's death and see who was involved, and there's like fated mates kind of storyline in the series as well. So far I'm enjoying it, and when I was getting the links for this and the screenshots, I accidentally read some of the little synopsis of the next books in the series, and I kind of spoiled a couple of things for me. It just basically justified that the series is slow, which is fine, and I'm definitely enjoying it. The ending of Dark Fae definitely was a little bit more exciting. That really kept me hooked to continue the series. I just want to know what happens. So moving on to the Empyrean series. I read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame 2 times, both rereads. I read them, back when those books were released multiple times already, but I read them 2 times just before Onyx Storm. The first time I read on the Kindle and also audiobook. They had the Whisper sync so that the audiobook syncs with the Kindle and it kind of highlights the words as it plays. I don't know if it does it for the actual Kindle device, but I have a Amazon Fire tablet and it runs on an Android operating system. It doesn't do it on like my phone or my iPad because I have the Apple iOS for pretty much everything else. So I read it that way, and then my library through Hoopla had free instant downloads, so I got the dramatized audiobooks for both those books and went through those in that format, and then I read Onyx Storm. So here is a spoiler-free, minor spoilers maybe, of Onyx Storm, so feel free to pass along or sticker or whatever. You have been warned if you haven't read it. I really loved this book. It gave us a lot more world building and we met some new characters, and it's just the perfect pace for a 5-book fantasy series. We learned some new information about different locations in this world and backgrounds of things that we didn't realize that Navarre had been keeping from everybody in this world. So I loved it and it was a lot of fun. Okay, so if you're still here and you haven't read the Empyrean series or Onyx Storm specifically, I suggest, heading out, skipping ahead if you want to know what books that I have on my February TBR. I'll put up the timestamp so you can skip ahead so that you are not spoiled. But yeah, if you haven't read Onyx Storm, this has been your spoiler warning. So I loved this book so much, and all throughout it I was laughing and shocked and everything. Like Riddick, hilarious. I love the fact that him and his dragon play pranks on each other. Like, what? That's so funny, and it was so like a fun little comedic relief in this like war. This whole series literally is about war, and it was a lot of fun with that. And then we got to learn more about the world and that these different isles kind of are somewhat isolated from the rest of the continent. And then we learned that the continent actually has a real name. It starts with an A that I actually cannot remember off the top of my head. It's like Amarales. I don't know. I'm definitely saying that wrong. I'd have to actually pull it up to remember what it was called. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And then like these isles, you get to learn about each one of them kind of worships a different specific god, and they had a different way of doing diplomatic things and how Violet's squad had to do these things to prove that they were worthy of speaking with the king and queen. And then we met Xaden's mom, and they ended up kind of horribly betraying Violet's squad and almost killing Riddick, and that was pretty scary. Not Riddick, it was Garrick. That was pretty, you know, nerve-wracking in itself. And then we got to learn about the Irids, which is Andorna's kind, and how they like devastated her, and then she disappeared, and that sucked. And then, as true Rebecca Yarros fashion, the last several chapters are so packed with events and things, and it was like the final battle of the book with Venin. And here's where I loved all of the things that we were presented. And I loved that it gives us a lot of things to think about and theorize about and give us stuff that we can take into the next couple of books and learn more information. But the things that got me was the first 2 books, you got the shock factor at the end of the book. The first book, Brennan is alive, literally last couple of lines of the book. And Violet thought he was dead for 6 years. And then the second book, Iron Flame, Xaden turns Venin for the first time. He's like, you know, baby stages of Venin. That was a shock because, like, why would we expect our main male character to become Venin, right? And so throughout Onyx Storm, Xaden is fighting, channeling in the ways that Venin channel, and if he loses control, he often loses control around Violet or in defense of Violet. Like, that's his character. He's been that way the entirety that we have known him, right? So it's no surprise by the end of the book, he channels a couple of times in defense of Violet. And by the end, in that final battle, it's super high stress. It's so much going on. He's defending his dragon. Like, that's like #1 over Violet. Like, of course that was going to happen. Like, obviously. And then throughout the book, there's been things that Xaden would mention to Violet, like, hey, if something happens, I need to know that you're going to take care of Tyrandor. You're going to be able to do what needs to be done in the event he's not able to, right? And so by the end, we learned that they are suddenly married, and there's a 12 hours of missing time in Violet's memory, and we learned that Imogen takes that memory at Violet's request, which makes sense. Like, those big main events absolutely were not shocking to me at all. I definitely saw them coming, but all of the other things that happened in those several chapters, we also got multiple POVs from Imogen and Rhiannon, and that was a lot of fun, and those chapters kind of happen simultaneously, so we get to learn from different perspectives things that happened during that battle. And then there's the question of why did Andorna randomly come back at the last second, saved Violet, which was good, and I loved that. But then there was the point where suddenly there's someone's new, Xaden's new brother. Who? Sorry, my battery died. So, yeah, so who is Xaden's brother? That's a good question. Could it be somebody new completely? Could it be somebody we have met who is his true blood brother? Some people think that it's a Venin brother because they all seem to be like interconnected weirdly. I don't know. We don't know enough about them. It kind of feels like their structure is like an MLM, like the more people you have under you, the more power the Sage and the Maven are. I don't know. That's a weird analogy, but that's what comes to my brain. Anyway, we learn Andorna randomly comes back to kind of save the day, and then Xaden and Violet are married, and then there's a big chunk of time missing. That, does Imogen know? Was she there, or did she suddenly just, Violet came to her and was like, hey, can you erase this recent memory? Like, how does her power really work? And then also, like, there's just so many things that happened that definitely keep me engaged, and I want to learn more in the next book. And yeah, but the ending was disappointing in the way that we didn't get that shock factor of the first 2 books that they had, because I anticipated those 2 main huge events happening, that the very last like couple lines where we learned she got married and Xaden's nowhere to be found, and there's 12 hours of time missing, and Imogen erased her memory. Just didn't give me that shock factor, because duh, those things of course happened. But yeah, that's just me. I fear I'm alone in not being as shocked at that ending, but I absolutely loved the book. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. Like, if I wasn't comparing it to the shock factor of the first two books, perfect. Like, it doesn't need it, but I was hoping for it just because that's been what Rebecca Yarros has given us thus far in this series. So that's just me. Okay, so moving on to my February TBR, so the books I want to read in February. Song of the Six Realms by Judy I. Lin. I'm not actually sure what this book is about. I don't even remember if it's a fantasy book or a romance. I think it's a fantasy romance, something like that. I don't know. It was in my Libby. My library had it, and for some reason, it intrigued me. And I have it on my shelf, so I need to read it before the borrow is up. Next is Financial Feminist by Tori Dunlap. I read this book in 2023 when it came out, and it's just a good book to kind of refresh different things. She goes over like why you might have certain thoughts towards money and how to get yourself financially stable and financially responsible and things like that, different tools that you can utilize throughout the book. And I love the way she is able to deliver her message in a way that's like, hey, we can do it. And her like thing she says a lot is the best way, easiest way in this capitalistic society we can beat the patriarchy is by getting ourselves financially stable and financially literate, and just basically, if you can't beat them, join them in the best way possible. And I love her podcast and everything that she brings to the financial space, if you will. So the next book I want to read is Variation by Rebecca Yarros. She just released this in November of last year. Like, when did she have the time between Onyx Storm and this book? Like, wow, what is she doing? I did hear she's going to take a break between writing and releasing Onyx Storm, so for the fourth book in the series. So yeah, I think Variation is another devastating romance. I read The Things We Leave Unfinished, I think it's called, a few months ago, and that one was so good and so engaging. I really enjoyed it. It just took me a minute to process between, like, we had 4 different perspectives kind of going, because we're like reading letters, and sometimes who's reading the letter was a perspective of somebody else. Like, it was confusing for a minute, but once I got into it, that one was really, really good. Not the point, because that was a while ago. Anyway, next book is a series of books that is included in an Amazon Originals collection. They're all novellas, and I think they're all like Valentine's-ish like theming. And so they are The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren, Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez, Rosie and the Dreamboat by Sally Thorne, Drop Cover and Hold On by Jasmine Guillory, With Any Luck by Ashley Polson, and Royal Valentine by Sarah Wilson. I read the like short story, the little novella collection for Christmas that they had, and that one they were fine. They were just really short, so it's like once it gets to a point, it feels like there should be more to the story, but they just end quickly. So I ended up getting all of these books in one audiobook file, so I'll just probably listen to it all the way through on Audible. And yeah, because I listen to a lot of books while I drive for work, because I drive a lot for work. And then I got the Poppy War series, like the entire series, in one Audible credit, because it was all one 30-hour book basically. So I want to read that series, which is The Poppy War, The Dragon Reputation, and Burning God by R.F. Kuang. I think it's a war dystopian story, something like that. I'm not sure, but I've seen and heard a lot of good things about it. And then continuing on, The World of Solaria by Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. I read Dark Fae in January, so I already started Savage Fae, and which picked up right where Dark Fae left off, and I'm probably 10% in, and so far it's really good. And then I'm not sure if I'm going to get to the entire 5 books this month, but starting with Savage Fae, continuing with Vicious Fae, Broken Fae, and Warrior Fae. I'll get to what I get to this month and then continue on into March after that. So I am pretty excited for these books that I have planned this month. I'm mostly excited for the Poppy War and then continuing on the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac. But yeah, let me know if there are any books that I've like listed here that you have read, and then if you have stuck through this entire book because you read Onyx Storm, please don't leave any spoilers in the comments because I don't want this video to be one that spoils it for everybody. So if you chose to skip that section, you don't want to go into the comments and see spoilers. So I will have that little section in a separate short video on TikTok or YouTube Shorts that you can, I'll link that in the description box below so that you can discuss there and not on this video. So that way we can keep this one a little bit more spoiler free and people could choose to skip that section or not if they have or have not read the book. So I am going to conclude this video here. If you've made it this far, please consider subscribing to my channel for more travel, Disney, and week of workouts every single week, and then my monthly recaps. My goal is to reach 500 subscribers by the end of April, and I'm about a quarter of the way there, so please like this video and comment below what book you're looking forward to reading this month the most so that YouTube can show this video to other people so that I can achieve that goal. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.